All right, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Orick. I'm waiting for my partner, Sean Williams, to join me. He said that he was running a little late and that he will join me as soon as he can, but I wanted to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, again. The off season has officially started. The Super Bowl, of course, was Sunday. It was a really good game, and I don't know how many. I'm going to talk about this with Sean, of course. But I don't know how many of you noticed this, but since what 2003, 2004, around that time, the Super Bowls have been increasingly more competitive and more entertaining than certainly the 80s Super Bowls and really the 90s Super Bowls. I mean, it's no longer the Super Blowout. That was the whole point of people being excited about the commercials more than the actual game itself because the game was a blowout. You think about, say the Cowboys Buffalo Bills games, the 49ers Broncos games. I mean, the even 1985 Bears against the Patriots, those games are basically over by the first quarter. And there's Sean right on cue. Hey, Sean, how's it going?
Going great, man. How about
All right, I went ahead and started the show because I wasn't sure when you were going to be able to come on, but I was just talking about how this Super Bowl has kind of been keeping in tradition. Super Bowls, I don't know, for the past 20 years, at least since 2003 or 2004, where the game is actually living up to the hype of being a championship ball game. How, part of the reason why people were getting so excited about the Super Bowl commercials is because the commercials were more exciting than the game itself.
Yeah, I see that. And I think this was one of the better championship games in recent memory.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, um, some of the games I was pointing out, like Buffalo and Dallas, and of course Denver and San Francisco, and the Bears and the Patriots back in '85. I mean, those were super blowouts. The game was over, but this was. I thought this game was over in the beginning of the fourth quarter, when Patrick Mahomes threw that second interception. I really thought, okay, there's no way they're going to come back, even though it was only a 10-point lead. I really thought in a Super Bowl, I didn't think the 49ers were going to give up the lead, but I forgot who the head coach was, Kyle Shanahan, who has now shown he has blown two Super Bowls.
Yeah, and I don't really think that they blew it. I mean, in comparison to that Atlanta Super Bowl, for example, you you lost that game because you were stupid.
Well, but
Now, this one you got beat by a team that did what they had to do when they had to do.
okay, but would you say that Shanahan made several key mistakes that ended up costing him the game?
I questioned the clock management before halftime.
Yep, that's one. That's one.
Uh, I questioned some of the play calling. Of course, we knew going in that the Chiefs were more than likely going to put the ball in Garoppolo's hands, and he would have to beat it. But I think that there were probably opportunities that you could have more legitimately used the ground game
Hmm.
and worked the clock once again.
Yep, yep. I completely agree. Yeah, I was going to point to 2 points in this game that I thought, well, looking back, cost him the game. I thought that wasting time the way he did before halftime, seemingly settling for a 10-10 tie going into halftime, I thought that was going to come back and bite him because you don't leave time, especially when you got all three timeouts. You don't leave time and opportunities go to waste. And he did. I don't know if you saw up in the they showed up in the suite where Lynch was sitting. John Lynch was sitting. He stood up and did the timeout signal right
Yeah.
after third down. So you burn one of your timeouts there before the Chiefs punt. You save all that time, and it was just. Then he calls a running play right out of the box. It was dumb clock management, and he was counting on that pass play to Kittle, which ended up being called back, and we can talk about that too in regards to the Saints. But um, that pass play became a desperation play, and then if you save your time, conserve time and use your timeouts properly, that play doesn't hurt as badly.
Yeah. It was like when they called that offensive pass interference penalty on Kittle.
Mm-hmm.
They threw the towel in.
Yeah.
You had plenty of time to. I mean, it worked that time. Why not try it again? What do you have to lose?
Well, you were out of time now. You had 6 seconds left. So you basically had to throw a Hail Mary. You had to throw it
Yeah.
into the end zone because you wasted so much time prior to that play. So yeah, now you had to take a knee.
I just I, I thought it was a really good, really clean, competitive game.
Yeah.
Uh, I disagree, and y'all know how I feel about Mahomes. I love the kid to death, and I think he's a really bright and shining sign of what the future of this league can be.
Mhm.
I disagree with him being the choice for MVP.
Who would you have given it to?
Williams,
Yeah, I agree. I think Williams
two
should have gone.
touchdowns, and I mean, if you look at what Kansas City's offense is and has been, and then you compare uh, Pat Mahomes' Super Bowl performance, it was really rather pedestrian.
Well,
Now,
yeah,
I'm not gonna like refuse to watch football ever again because they chose the wrong guy for the MVP, but I think that Williams deserved it
well,
because he is the one that put the knife in their heart.
yeah, he did, and I think they let the fourth quarter really shape who the MVP of that game was going to be because Mahomes really began to take advantage of a lot of stuff that he had the 49ers defense on the heels. And he got Richard Sherman isolated. He got him in a big play to Sammy Watkins. He made those key throws, but he also threw two interceptions that could have cost him the game. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I don't feel he deserves the MVP. I thought Edwards, he reminded me of as I watched that game. I don't know if anybody else noticed this. He reminded me of Pierre Thomas in that game, especially when he would catch those little balls in the flat. And it looks like it's gonna be a 2 yard gain, and he makes a couple moves and lets blockers slide off of him and lunges and gets the 10 yards for that first down. It was very Pierre Thomas like in the way they did he ran in that game.
Yes, I agree completely.
And I really that's kind of why I'm also leaning towards saying yeah he probably deserves the MVP more. He got 100 yards rushing. He scored two touchdowns, I believe. I think he scored two. I don't remember who scored on that one play was direct snap. Was that Williams?
Uh,
The ones when they came out almost like in the old single wing and they do a little pirouette and Mahomes goes off to the side. It was a direct snap straight to
I
the
think
running back.
that was Williams.
Yeah, I think so. I think he got two touchdowns in that game.
Yeah, he got two. One was the dagger at the
Yeah,
end.
so that would be the other one. Okay, all right. Yeah, because that was yeah that you're right. I'm looking at it right now. He did get the other one. Um, but it was it was just a really exciting game with all the drama in the fourth quarter, which is what you want to see in a championship game.
Yeah. So looking at this, we had this conversation sitting here watching the game the other
Mm-hmm.
day,
Mm-hmm.
and before the game started, I made the comment to a buddy of mine. I said, "You're going to see the beginning of a legacy today." And he said, "Who are you talking about?" I said, "Patrick Mahomes." And he said, "Well, hopefully it won't be a legacy like Marino."
Mm.
So, with that in mind, looking forward,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think this game? I know it's only like 3 years old, but what does this game legitimately do to the career of Patrick Mahomes?
I don't know. I mean, MVP his first year as a starter, Super Bowl champion his second year as a starter. I don't know yet. I think it's too early to really make that prediction. Only because no, Patrick Williams got one TD. I don't know who got that second one. It was I mean sorry, Damian Williams only got that first TD. I don't know who got that second one. Um,
Well, he got two in the game because he got the one at
you
the
know what it
very.
is? They counted it as a pass. That's what it. They counted something as a pass because they got one TD receiving, one TD rushing. So
Okay.
they
Okay.
must have counted that play as a pass. I was just looking at the stats just to make sure I wasn't crazy. But here's the thing. Okay, in this game, we can sit there and say for 2019 in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes showed he was the man. Okay, he won 3 playoff postseason games, all 3 trailing in the first quarter, and came back because I believe the 49ers took a 10-7 lead in the first quarter. But anyway, trailing games and came back to win them convincingly all 3 times. Okay.
Yeah.
But there were periods during the season in 2019, even before he got hurt and right after he got hurt, where he did not look like, the superstar he was in 2018. So I'm leaving the door open right now. I think he has potential to be the next superstar, especially in the AFC. But let's see how he handles success now.
Yeah. And we both know, we all know that the only way that he's going to cement his legacy is for that organization to maintain the talent around him that he has at this moment.
Right, right. I mean, you just look at the last few Super Bowl champions, or even the Super Bowl participants. The Philadelphia Eagles, Carson Wentz, like an MVP caliber candidate, league MVP caliber candidate, gets hurt right before the end of the regular season, right before the playoffs begin. Nick Foles comes in, actually wins a championship, but Carson Wentz has not returned to that form. Um, Last year, Jared Goff and the Rams offense looked unstoppable. Now, this past year, Goff looks more like a, a beaten up Jim Everett, the post Phantom sack Jim Everett. And I like you, Jim. I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying he looks like how he looked in the Los Angeles Rams after that championship game against the 49ers where he suffered the phantom sack. He did not look like the same player after that. So,
And,
it,
and, and conversely,
mhm,
what does this do to the? And I've got to be careful with my wording here because I don't want to sound like I'm jumping on the bandwagon of all the people that have just absolutely brutalized Jimmy Garoppolo in the past 48 hours. But what does this do for the narrative around him?
don't know yet. So, the same thing. So far, He looks like an upper tier game manager. And I say that as you can't put the game in his hands and expect him to win every time. The Saints game is an outlier now. What we saw in this game, and maybe the way this game was called, as far as Shanahan, the play caller, shows a lack of trust in Garoppolo putting the ball in his hand and making the play. So we have to see, does he grow?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, Calvin pointed out the Patriots exposed Goff's inability to make decisions on his own post the 15-second mark. That's what Sean Payton was saying in the NFC Championship game last year. Make noise from the period, from the time the ball is picked up from the end of the previous play until the ball is snapped again, because he's getting his instructions in the helmet speaker, and he's making sure. And I'm talking about McVay. He's making sure he's calling the defense out to Goff, spoon feeding him, telling him this is what you need to do here before that 15-second mark. And Sean Payton knew it, and certainly Bill Belichick knew it. And they were changing their defenses after the 15-second mark. And teams noticed that, and they were taking advantage of Goff, and that's why Goff has regressed. You got to take the training wheels off of him, and they haven't done it yet. So that's what I'm curious to see what happens with Garoppolo. Does Shanahan start trusting him to make decisions and make the calls, take the training wheels off of him, make the play? I don't know if he does. I don't know yet.
Well, in terms of Goff, I can't help but believe that the central element to the potential growth of Goff as a quarterback is going to hinge directly on Todd Gurley and his health and effectiveness.
Well, and that's the stupidity of their front office, because you've got a running back now with an arthritic knee. If you had a first round draft pick, you could probably select his successor and start getting that guy ready, maybe to be the speed back to kind of turn Gurley into Deuce McAllister in 2006. More your power back than your speed back. Somebody you're gonna rotate with. But they don't have a first round draft pick. They don't have a first round draft pick next year. They don't have one in 2021 either. And I think they're out of the one from 2022. So that franchise is in trouble. They're going to have a lot of free agents they got to pay and not have many draft picks to kind of restock the cabinet with cheap players. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm
and
fine.
not only that, you don't have a lot of fairy dust to be sprinkling around thanks to the exorbitant contracts of Goff, of
Yep.
Gurley.
Yep. And now you got to pay Jalen Ramsey because you gave up a first round pick for him. So you got to pay him.
And Aaron Donald.
It's going to be interesting. And they just fired Wade Phillips earlier this last month. Yeah.
Which I can't I can't see the logic in that. Because Wade Phillips is a guy that's going to get you more with less than most defensive coordinators.
Wade Phillips has his tradition, almost his reputation. First couple of years he's around, his defenses really take off and confuse and are very successful against offenses. Then, for whatever reason, teams sort of figure him out, what he's done, and he never changes.
And then he disappears for a little while.
Then he gets fired, yeah. And then he ends up somewhere else and does the same thing over again. It's like perpetual Groundhog Day as him as a defensive coordinator. Because, even when he was with the Saints, You look at that defense for the Saints when he was the defensive coordinator in 81, 82, 83. You saw a definite uptick in that defense. 84, they kind of plateau, and 85, they go way down. And Wade Phillips was fired along with everybody else at the end of the 85 season because he was the interim head coach when Bump resigned. But yeah, the defense was never as good in 83 as it was in 84 and 85. I'm sorry, reverse that. The defense in 84 to 85 was never as good as the defense in 83. The defense in 83 was the best Wade Phillips defense. So, and you just see that at every stop when he was with Dallas, when he was with Buffalo, when he was with Denver, just go down his resume. It's the same thing. So,
And speaking of defense,
yeah,
as we continue our trip down this year's memory lane, and we're doing these evaluations of positional groupings.
Yep.
This week is defensive line, correct?
Yep. I got them all up there today. The big free agent. The big free agent is Anyamata. That's the one guy. Do the Saints pay him or not on the defensive line? What is your take on the defensive line? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses?
Well, let me turn that around and go at it from the reverse angle.
Okay.
The weakness. In the first half of the season, you saw just absolute off the charts play by this group because just about every down you're rotating players in that are fresh. But towards the end of the season, with the injuries to Rankins and to Davenport, you saw so much less of that. Now the thing is going to be, as you said, Onyemata is coming up as a free agent. Did we do enough in their absence to make it worth the Saints' while to try to lock him in again? I'm 50-50 on that. I think that in terms of just absolute pure brute strength, Onyemata may be one of the strongest guys that I've ever seen playing on the defensive line. I mean, he straight arms an offensive tackle much the way that Reggie White used to do that. And when we drafted him out of Canada, he had played 2 years of organized football, maybe, and the line. I remember doing the draft synopsis on him, and the narrative on him was that he was just absolute raw, pure brute force. You give him a couple of seasons with a good coach to give him some finesse to go with that power, and then you might have something. And I believe that Onyemata is an asset. But are you going to be able to find a place with him on the same defensive line with Cam Jordan, with Davenport, with Rankins? That's going to be the biggest issue to me.
I feel like, Calvin says Onyemata is the only must sign to me on that line, and I agree. I think he is a guy you need to have because he fits well in the rotation. I thought at the end of the season last year, once Rankins and especially Davenport were out, the more Onyemata played, the more his lack of experience or lack of pass rushing recognition moves were being exposed. He's a guy right now that probably needs to play 25 to 30 snaps a game, not more than that. Rankins has to be your number one guy in there. And that's really because Rankins just is that much more talented. But you want an Onyemata to come in because, like you said, he's a strong player. He's a fast player. When he rotates in with fresh legs, he is so much more effective. Um, but losing Sheldon Rankins 2 years in a row by the end of the season, the postseason, that really has impacted this defensive line because Rankins really can tie up a lot of people at one time. Um, and I'm getting a little aggravated because I'm seeing in Saints social media, Saints Twitter, Saints Facebook, people calling Rankins injury prone. Look, he's had 2 seasons really of injuries. He had the torn Achilles tendon in the playoffs, and then this past year recovering from the torn Achilles tendon, and then the foot injury, which I believe he dislocated his foot. I think that's what had happened to him. I don't remember if it was him or um, Davenport that had the dislocated foot, but that's basically what we're talking about as far as injuries. So we're really talking about 28, 2019. Um, Rankins, to me, is key to this defensive front taking the next step forward. Because I think Malcolm Brown was a steal as a free agent. Um, he was a definite upgrade over Davison. He showed a lot more than just being a space eater run stuffer. He did show the ability to push the pocket. Um, when you had Davenport, Brown, Rankins, and Cam Jordan in there, that's when you were talking about what you started your conversation about when you saw this defensive line really dominate. When all those starts Teddy Bridgewater had, when those four were in there, that's when the defense really looked impressive. Um, as soon as Rankins got hurt, then Davenport started getting banged up and got hurt. I thought they didn't play nearly as well. Um, so to me, that's the key. I thought if we would have had Davenport in that Vikings playoff game, I think Jordan would have been more effective because now they can't take. They started doubling Rankins right before his injury. They started really noticing what this man was doing. Um, I got a picture right here in the middle. It's Rankins, um, Brown, and Davenport. You look at Davenport standing next to those two. He's towering over Rankins and Brown. I mean, the arm length, the size, the speed. Once this kid figures everything out, he's going to be unbelievable. He is
Yeah,
going to be like how Boza was this past year.
and I think looking at it now, of course, no one, there's not nearly the talk in terms of this as it was at the moment that it happened. But I feel like I'm absolutely justified in saying that was absolutely a great deal to make. And Lord, I'm drawing a blank.
With Davenport, the Davenport
Yeah,
trade.
Davenport.
Yeah,
Davenport is going to be worth everything that we gave for him.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, Mike Pattillier said it best. You need two kind of players to have a dominant franchise in the NFL today. You need a franchise quarterback, and you need a player that can take the other team's quarterback and put him on his butt. And you got that with Cam Jordan. You're soon getting that with Marcus Davenport. You got to do what you can to get those kind of players. Um, some people were comparing him to other players that were taken out of that draft, but you're looking at the short-term success, like of a Harold Landry or a player like that. Davenport, you're looking at a much longer term, higher ceiling kind of player. You're not drafting at number 3 overall or number 2 overall, where you can get a Nick Bosa, okay, a polished, ready to start from day one kind of player that Nick Bosa was. You're taking a guy who you're projecting an upside where he can be a perennial all pro, first team all pro kind of defensive end. And that's what you're trying to get. You're trying to get that in the middle of the draft instead of at the very top of the draft, where those
Yeah.
kind of players usually come from. So you have to go up there and go get that guy. Like the Chiefs went up and got Patrick Mahomes. They were drafting really low. They had to go up and go get that guy. So that's how you have to look at. Sometimes you have to look at the draft, not a guy, not necessarily a player who can start immediately, and his graph is only going to go up this high. You want the guy who's going to go up this high because he has a longer career projected arc than the guy who's probably going to plateau in year 3 or 4. And here we are when he's a first round pick at year 5 debating, do you really want to keep this guy? Like you look at a Vic Beasley, for example. Okay. Vic Beasley's drafted high. He had that great first and second year, and then he plateaued and he's not growing anymore. We had the same kind of player with Charles Grant. You had that with Cedric Ellis. You didn't grow. You didn't get better. That's what you want. You want a Cam Jordan, for example, a guy who's progressively getting better each and every year. So that's kind of how I feel about Davenport.
Well, I look at Davenport as probably the future successor of Cam Jordan, and is what he means to this team.
Yeah. Okay. So let's throw one more guy out there. Well, we'll talk about Cam again in a minute. I want to throw one more guy out there. The unexpected guy. The guy that you probably didn't even realize he was going to make this roster. Shy Tuttle. And I got the stiff on picture up there. But
I love that.
That is such a great picture. That is such a great picture. But Shy Tuttle, I mean, you think about this guy. Last year it was Taylor Stallworth. This year, Shy Tuttle comes in. A lot of people were probably surprised he even made the team. Probably looking at him more like, okay, he's going to be around until Rankins comes and they'll cut him and put him on the practice squad, or maybe just cut him outright and we'll never hear from him again. What was your your impression of Shy Tuttle?
Once he came from nowhere and absolutely, he was one of the most dominant players on that defensive line.
He's another, yeah. To me, I feel the same way. He was a guy that, God, I sound like Chris Collinsworth. Here's a guy. No, he was a guy that when you gave him an opportunity, he took advantage of it. But once again, you can't have him out there for a lot of snaps, but you get him 10 to 15, maybe 20 snaps a ball game. He's going to make a play. He's going to do something. And I was very happy that for getting that kind of production out of him. And I think going back to how we started this whole conversation, his being able to rotate these players, with fresh legs and getting fresh production out of these guys in the fourth quarter. That's amazing. That is
in that Bridgewater run. Mm-hmm. When Breeze was hurt, that is what won the games for us.
Yep.
Having that defensive line that could get penetration, they could get to the quarterback, they could disrupt the run game, and allow that secondary to have that 2 or 3 second window to keep somebody covered. That's what won those games for us. When they talk about how the defense won it, well, that was what the defense did to win.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, and it all came from that defensive line, that defensive front, where you had the players that made plays. So when the offense was back out on the field, they weren't playing from behind. I think the largest deficit that Teddy Bridgewater faced while he was a starter was 4 points. The game's always in reach. You weren't falling behind or in a shootout, because that defensive line was controlling the offensive line, the opposition's offensive line. And I think that's where we have a little concern with Onyemata, because does a team offer him starter money to be a starter on that defensive line, and we can only offer him backup money? That's what we have to watch out for this offseason, because
Is he restricted or unrestricted?
he's unrestricted, because he had a 4-year deal because he was a fourth round pick. So I'm sorry, yeah, 2016, 2020, yeah, he's entering his fourth season. So he had 3 years. So he's entering his fourth season now, or the fourth year. So 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, yeah, 4-year deal. Okay, so he's entering his fifth season. Um, so that's the question with him. Do you pay him like like a starter, or can we afford just to keep him as a rotational backup player? That's what we have to watch out for this season.
With so many hungry mouths to feed, I don't see how you can get the top dollar.
You can't. No, the Saints can't.
No.
So
you're coming up on Rankins outliving that rookie contract.
Yep.
And it won't be long after that before you'll have the same situation with Davenport.
Well, Davenport, you still got this is only his second season, so you still got 3 more years. But
yeah, he was a first round.
Yeah, he was a first round, so he's got the 5-year deal. Rankins is entering his 5th year now. So you got to make a decision on Rankins. And I think it's going to depend tremendously on his health. He's got to finish this season healthy. He cannot have an injury plagued season again, because then I think the Saints start seriously considering moving on from him.
Yeah.
But if he can stay healthy and have an impact, then he's going to cash in big money. And again, that complicates Onyemata's deal, because you want to keep Onyemata to keep developing him with and dangle that carrot in front of him. You could possibly become a starter in this offense if you stay here, in defense, if you stay. But if another team says, no, we're going to make you a starter now and go get him, the Saints can't match that deal. They can't do anything with that.
Well, there again, much like I said about Teddy Bridgewater, it's going to come down to that player's decision on what they're comfortable with in terms of their team. With Bridgewater, you're what, 38 years old?
What? He's 20. He'll be 29. Yeah, he'll be 28, 29 years old. He's 28 right now.
So, legitimately speaking, with Bridgewater, the only thing that any team is going to offer him, in my opinion, now this is strictly my opinion, the only thing that a team is going to offer him is starter pay, bring him in to be a bridge to the next franchise guy that they acquire. We're not going to talk a big, lucrative, long-term deal. Nobody is going to offer him that because of his age, because of his injury-plagued past. Now, do you want to go somewhere else for 2 or 3 seasons and then be looking for work again? Or do you want to stay in New Orleans where you got a pretty good gig? I know that every quarterback wants to be a starter.
Well, I was going to say the problem with Teddy is he's got to look at it from the standpoint of age. Okay? If I'm going to be a starter at some point, can I afford to wait out Drew Brees? And I think the Saints basically, Sean Payton during Super Bowl week pretty much laid that out. He said it's unrealistic that all 3 quarterbacks come back. Okay? They've got the door open wide for Drew. Taysom is an unrestricted free agent. And I think they're going to work very hard at keeping Taysom.
Taysom's restricted, isn't he?
Yes, he's restricted. So that means you tender him a deal and the Saints have the opportunity to match any deal that someone offers him. And I'm assuming they're going to tender him high enough that they get a high round draft pick for him, a second or at least or a first round draft pick if they sign Taysom and the Saints do not match the deal. Okay. So a team would have to be willing to sacrifice a second or first round pick for a 30-year-old quarterback who's never started an NFL game.
And I don't see the Saints allowing Taysom Hill out of the building.
Well, and I don't either. And so that leaves you with Teddy Bridgewater. Where does he go? He's got to, if he's going to come back to the Saints, he's coming back on a cheap contract, paying him less money than he got paid this year. Okay. Is that what he wants to do? Like he said, I'm going with my mind, not with my heart, when I go look at free agency this year. Meaning, I love New Orleans. I want to stay in New Orleans, but I have to be realistic and say if someone offers me a starter's job, and I'm looking at the Bears, I'm looking at the Steelers, I'm even looking at the Jaguars, okay? Someone offers me a starter's job, do I, or even Tampa Bay, I'm going to throw Tampa in the mix too. Do I take the gig and prove myself to be an NFL starter, or do I take less money, sit behind Drew Brees, who every year is going to go through this motion now? Am I going to stay? Am I going to stay? Because I think Drew wants to retire in a Super Bowl. Holding that trophy up, that's his last game, his final game as a pro. He owns all the records. He's got a second ring. His kids are all up there on that stage. You notice how big that stage was, by the way, Sunday night, compared to Super Bowl 44? I mean, they had like 2 whole rows. I think every player could sit up there now. So, yeah, Drew's going to be up there with his family, all his kids, holding that trophy. I own all the records. I got my second ring. There's nothing else I can do. I'm retiring. And I think that's what he's holding out for. As long as he sees that window open with these players that he's got around him, he's going to want to keep playing because this is not a team in decline. I think if this team doesn't make the playoffs or fails again, and now we're starting to talk about, okay, now who we won't be able to pay. I'm just going to throw names out. We won't be able to pay Lattimore if we're going to keep Kamara. We won't be able to pay Rankins if we're going to keep Davis. Whatever. Or we're not going to be able to pay Rankins because we got to pay Ramchek. Whatever the situation is. If Brees sees that happening, then Brees is going to say, well, you know what? I gave it my best. We just didn't make it that second time. I'm good now and I'm going to retire. But right now, I think Drew is looking at this as we can still make another run with this core group. We can finish strong. And I think that's what's driving that. So that affects Bridgewater's decisions.
Yeah. Every player, you see it in all branches of the sport, professional sports.
Mm-hmm.
You see players doing weird things and making off the wall deals, chasing that championship trophy.
Yeah.
And if you, everybody that plays in the NFL wants a ring. Obviously, that's the ultimate goal. And if you see yourself sitting on the bench or holding a clipboard and getting that ring versus going somewhere has absolutely no legitimate chance of being in that position, just because they make you a starter, are you good with that?
Depends on your age. I think for a player like Mark Brunell, he was good with that. But I think a player who feels like he has the ability to elevate a team with his talent, I think he jumps at that opportunity. I'm not saying that you're going to jump on a team like, oh, the Bengals, for example. You're not, or the Browns. You're not going to jump on a team like that. But I think, Bridgewater could look at a team like Tampa Bay, for example, and think, okay, look, they've got a couple of good linebackers on that team. They've got a coach who's building something. You've got good receivers. The biggest problem you had on that team was quarterback. You know, he threw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, but he also threw 30 interceptions. I'm not going to throw 30 interceptions. I probably can match his totals, if not do better, and give that team another 4 to 5 wins. And they finished what, 7-9? You're looking at 5 more wins, 12-4. That's a team that would appeal to him. And I'm just throwing Tampa out there because that's a good example of a team that's got quarterback problems. The Bears are the same way. The Bears have a championship level defense. They've just got a terrible coach and a terrible quarterback. And if I'm
And you
getting,
saw the same thing with the Bears before in the Super Bowl with the same exact issue.
yeah, but I think Bridgewater could look at a team like the Bears and go, you know what? That defense will play well enough that I'm not going to be expected to carry it, but I can do enough in it to win games, and maybe we can get back to being a playoff team. They got to fix their kicking situation too, but they can make a move into the playoffs. So yeah, I can see that on that side. It's there's going to be a lot of people predicting no market for him. I think there will be a limited market for teams that do not want or do not think they're in a position to draft a quarterback. You know, like the Steelers, like the Bears, like the Bucks. So that'll be interesting to see. And
You said the same thing about Carolina as well. Because I don't think the Cam Newton plays another game.
now, but I'm going to say this for the Panthers. I think they're going to totally blow that team up and start over again. I think that coach is going to that Baylor coach is going to take that team, take it apart, and build it a team like how he wants it built. And I don't think he's going to do that with a veteran quarterback. I think he's going to go out there and get his own quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to look at a Jordan Love or a Abear or Herbert. Sorry, Justin Herbert he's not Cajun.
Abear in Louisiana.
Yeah, Abear only Herbert in Oregon. That kind of player. I think that's where he's looking. He brought in his offensive coordinator, the LSU offensive coach, the former Saint Joe Brady. He's going in there to build a Saints-like offense, and he's going to build that around a new quarterback. I think Cam Newton probably ends up in Washington personally.
Yeah.
I think he follows Riverboat Ron over there to Washington.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because when Cam Newton said last year he doesn't think there's any point to having an offensive play calling system with a lot of verbiage, well, you're in the wrong league now, buddy, because you don't fit in on this offense and you're not going to fit in on Joe Brady's offense. You're going to have to go to a pretty simplistic offense. And I think that's what Ron Rivera is going to run over there in Washington.
Well, we've seen it a million times before. You play for this coach for years and years and years, and he winds up taking a different job, and he takes a player that provides him a little bit of a comfort level and squeezes another couple of years out of him.
Yep. Well, and I think that's why going back to Carolina, why I think it's a total rebuild. I think that's partially what drove Kuechly to retire. Is he's looking at it? Do I feel like going through a rebuild? I'm pretty beat up. Do I want to do this? Probably not. They're not going to just let me go in free agency. They're not going to trade me because no one's going to trade for me. It's probably just best if I retire and just go out like this.
I think Kuechly was scared from those concussions.
He probably
And you
was.
see that more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure his I'm not sure if he's married, but I'm assuming he is. But I'm sure his wife is saying, "Yeah, I'm seeing things, and I don't want you to be 45 years old and your brain is Swiss cheese. I don't
Yeah,
want you to be Dave Jurison or Gene Atkins,
Mike
or who else?
Mike Webster.
Yeah, Mike Webster or Junior Seau. I don't want you to be like that. Even Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon's in that position.
Yeah.
And I think he's looking at it like going, it's not going to be. I'm not healthy. This is not going to be an easy rebuild. I'm just. It's better if I move on. And I think that's why the Panthers now looking at this as we're going to start over from scratch. We got Christian McCaffrey. We're going to try and build our offense around his skills while we groom a quarterback in this new system, and we're going to build the team up from there. Um,
Yeah.
there's a player I'd like to get from the Panthers, Bradbury, to come over to the Saints, but we'll talk about him when we get to the free agency and the cornerbacks. Okay, one of the players that Calvin had mentioned earlier, the Jaguars are looking at letting some of their defensive talent go because they've got so many players that are eating up their cap. Let me see.
They are in the position now that the Rams are getting ready to be.
Yeah, but they built themselves to win now. And the problem they did that with is they didn't have a quarterback. They built. Um, I'm looking up their roster right now. Jacksonville Jaguars roster. What is this dude's name? Do, do, do.
Quarterback?
No, not the quarterback. No. I'm talking about the defensive lineman. No, I know what they did with the quarterback. They tried to win with Bortles, and then they paid a ton of money to Nick Foles, which is a lesson for a lot of people. Nick Foles is kind of like I can't believe I'll make this comparison, but he's kind of like Dave Wilson with the Saints from years ago. From the standpoint of he's the kind of guy you can pull off of the bench. I probably should compare him to Wade Wilson because Wade Wilson's more like, but he's the kind of guy you can come off the bench, win a game for you, start a few games, look like a franchise quarterback. But when you make him the man, his streakiness comes about.
Yeah, he just failed on that one.
Yeah, he just does not. He's not as strong as um, as a full time starter. His weaknesses start to show, and I think one of the things that you saw with him was his slow delivery, his slow decision making. That's what happened in Jacksonville. In Philadelphia, he had a little more. He had some more weapons. He was able to get the ball out quicker, but with the receivers he had in Jacksonville, he was taking a little bit longer. Marcel Darius is the guy I was thinking of. He's 29 years old, defensive tackle. That's somebody who the Saints could possibly look at because the Jaguars may have to cut him because they can't afford to keep him. They made that trade. I think he came from Buffalo originally, and
Yes.
yeah, that's a guy they're probably going to have trouble keeping a hold of. The guy that Calvin was talking about. This is defensive end, Yannick Ngawin.
In both ways.
There we go. All right. I could not say this dude's name to save my life. I'm pronouncing it phonetically. Ngakoue. Um, fourth year player out of Maryland. He's a defensive end. The problem you have is okay, so you've got money tied up in Cam Jordan. You have um, Davenport, who you were counting on to be a starter. Where does he fit in? Are you going to use him as a rotational player, or are you going to put him as a starter and rotate him in with Davenport? I think that the danger with that is the message you're sending about Davenport. If you're rotating a guy like him in with him, that's a lot different than a Trey Hendrickson or before that, Alex Okafor, where that's an old Alex Okafor, especially was an older player. He is probably much better as a rotational player at this point of his career. This guy is a young guy. He's 6'2", 246. Kind of built more like a tweener, but he's more of a defensive end and a linebacker.
Yeah.
But I was just looking at Marcel Darius. That's somebody who I think Jacksonville may have to trade or move on from because I don't think they can afford to keep him with Nick Foles' Nick Foles' contract on their payroll. So
How long is Foles' deal?
I want to say a 4-year deal. Let me look at this real quick and see. Because I'm not positive.
Because they're more than likely, now, they are more than likely ready to cut pay.
Well, yeah, but the problem you have when you do something like that is you have to eat all that guaranteed money that you've got spaced out over the length of his deal in one season. So
And if I'm not mistaken, his contract was fully guaranteed.
I don't think it's fully guaranteed, but let's see.
It was either him or the guy from Minnesota. Uh, One of them's new deal was fully guaranteed. Keenan.
Yeah, hang on. This damn thing. I'm trying to. They got so many. It's like it's thinking on the Jacksonville official site. So this site sucks. It takes so long to react to anything. It does. It's a the hamster must be dead. Nick Foles contract. Here we go. Nick Foles statue. Okay, he agreed to a 4-year, $88 million contract. Let's see how much is guaranteed. Do, do, do. 50.125 million. So yeah, that's more than half of it. The max value of the contract is 102 million. So if they were to cut him or try and trade him, which nobody's going to eat that salary.
Yeah.
Let's look at what his cap hit would be. Holy shit. If you try and do something with him, his cap hit would be 46,625,000.
So he's probably going to be in Jacksonville for a little while.
He's going to have to be at least through 2021 because if he can get out in 2021, it goes down to 12.5 million. Yeah. So, yeah, the bulk of his cap hit is all in the first half of his deal, 2019, 2020. So, yeah, they're stuck with him for at least another year. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, his salary, his cap value is a lot smaller. This is part of the thing I always talk about when you look at contract deals, like we're talking about Drew Brees, what his contract deal is going to be. When you look at the total value of the contract, his cap hit is smaller than his cap hit if you cut him because, like I said, all that money that you've pushed off to the end of the deal or the back half of the deal, all that gets shoved forward into this year, you know. So that's the danger. That's why Drew Brees, for example, will cost the Saints $21 million this year against this cap if he does not if they don't keep him, if they don't bring him back. Because if you bring him back, now you can spread that cap hit along with his new contract out over the rest, however long you want to spread this deal out. Let's just say, for sake of argument, they make Drew Brees, which is, I think this is what they're going to do, a 3-year, $50 million deal. All right. I'm just pulling numbers out the air. The first and second year contracts will be low cap figures. But if he retires and leaves after year 3, that's where all the cap hit would come into play. Okay. The key
And
to
the third year would be automatically voided anyway, just
right,
like that.
right. And the key with this is too is we're reaching the end of the current collective bargaining agreement. So how the new CBA is structured will affect his cap hit. So that's something else you can play with. That's just little games you can do. Okay. But what you want to do with the Saints um, is you want to push his cap hit, his big impact numbers towards the end of his deal. Sign him like a 2 or 3 year deal, which I'd like to see him sign him for a 3 year deal. Okay. With the third year being the option year. You know, does he want to stay? That way you can push off as much money as you can. You can have Thomas's deal start to end just as you're starting to pay, the Camaras, the Ramchek, if you're going to pay Lattimore, those guys. Cam Jordan's deal will be coming to an end by that point. You got deals ending as your younger players are getting paid, and that cap keeps growing, and the new CBA may change the whole dynamics. You're counting on the future being better for you, and you continue to draft well, so you can replace players. If you decide I'm not going to pay Lattimore, well, look what I got. I drafted a cornerback in the first round of the 2020 draft. He's ready to be my starter, and I got the rookie contract. That's kind of how you have to look at things. So.
Yeah. Well, we do want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on the Dome. We didn't pay the bills
Oh, we did
because
not. No, we
I
did
didn't
not.
care. Thank you for joining us. You can follow our show on iTunes and on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter at 79 Saints and at Drew's Dad 3721. And I want to say congratulations to the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. And I was really happy to see Andy Reid finally bust that Lombardi trophy. That's something that should have happened a long time ago. It only took him 222 games to be able to do that, and it's a well-deserved honor for that coach.
Have you seen the meme? I don't mean to interrupt. Have you seen the meme of Andy Reid and Trump has got it's from the national championship game from, I think, last year before last, where he had all the fast food out there for those guys, because that's what they asked for. That's the part that people don't talk about. But he's got the
Yeah.
fast food out there, and they said, Andy Reid wins the Super Bowl. And then they got Trump with the spread of all the fast food. Andy Reid's face is like, yeah, it's hilarious.
Well, I saw the post-game interview that he did with the NFL Network, and they asked him how was he going to celebrate that night. He said, "I'm going to get the biggest cheeseburger that I can find."
I'm the same way. I mean, you saw what I posted. They needed to run 65 toss power trap in that game, just
Yeah.
because I'm probably about as happy after a Super Bowl win since Super Bowl 44, as far as seeing the Chiefs get this Super Bowl, because I have a thing for small market teams. I always have, whether it's the Packers, the Chiefs, the Bills, even the Seahawks to an extent, although I wasn't that happy to see the Seahawks win Super Bowls. But I mean, I've always liked the small market teams because, those are the teams that really, you look at a team like Kansas City, the fans of that stadium are like a college. That was like a college team out there. I
Yeah.
mean, Arrowhead reminds me of Tiger Stadium, Death Valley 2 over there in Clemson, the Horseshoe at Ohio State, Michigan. It's that kind of atmosphere, even the Tomahawk Chalk and all that stuff. As politically incorrect as that stuff is, it's like you're in Florida State. You're in Tallahassee listening to that, or the Gator Chomp in Gainesville. I mean, that's the kind of atmosphere I feel like Arrowhead creates. And so I was so excited and so happy that these guys won.
Well, what people don't realize is being fans of a small market team, and I think that you can also include New Orleans in that
Oh,
category.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's why
Being
I feel affinity for them.
being a fan of a small market team is something that's not as easy as it is to be a Cowboys fan or a Patriots fan or a Rams fan. You got to work harder at it. You're not always going to be able to turn on the TV on Sunday. Of course, now it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Mhm.
But you got to work harder to be a small market team fan.
Well, and you heard them during the game. They didn't even mention the players' names, but talking about the great players and great coaches that came through Kansas City in the past 50 years. And here's something else. Let me just say this real quick. It took the Steelers 44 years to win their first Super Bowl in 74, 75. Okay. Um, it took the Saints 43 years to win their first Super Bowl in 2009. It took the Chiefs from winning their first Super Bowl in 1969, 50 years just to get back.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone is why you had to pull for them. And, I'm thinking about the great players, the Derek Thomases, even Tony Gonzalez, who is recognized, but,
Joe Delaney.
yeah, Nick Neil Smith, all those great players that came and played in Kansas City and never got to play for a championship team.
And what people also forget, the quarterback of all quarterbacks finished his career
Yeah.
in Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, there was a time, and I think I posted it in the group on Facebook. There was a time where the Chiefs were like going through old San Francisco quarterbacks: Steve DeBerg, Joe Montana, Steve Bono, Elvis Grbac. They were just going one after another, grabbing
Yeah.
old 49ers quarterbacks, trying to get back to the game, the championship game. So, yeah, I was it was great that they won. It really made me happy to see, because the kind of coach Andy Reid is, the kind of team Kansas City, and the kind of fans Kansas City has.
Well,
49er,
for me, it
49er
was
fans.
Andy Reid, but I am even though as close as we got, he wasn't able to become a Saint. I'm a real fan of Patrick Mahomes. I have been since he played at Texas Tech. The type of young man that he has become and the way that he carries himself, I think that is absolutely something that this league desperately needs as the
Yep.
face of the league.
Yeah.
He's such a great young man, and he carries himself well. He's very well spoken, very respectful.
And he's in a small market.
All of that aside, he's not really a very bad quarterback.
No, it's going to be interesting when we play them next year, because it's going to be a hell of a battle with him, because it's all about shutting him down, because he'll have the weapons to be effective. Anna said something real quick, and I just wanted to address this real quick because I know you got to go, Sean. But Anna was talking about, is she the only one who can't see Taysom as a starting quarterback?
No,
No, you're not the only one. Unfortunately,
I think, if I can,
yeah,
interject something.
sure.
I think that what people are seeing, they're reading way too much into it. When Sean Payton gets up and says that he can't see retaining all three of these quarterbacks, everybody is just jumping to the conclusion that Taysom Hill is going to be what's left after Teddy Bridgewater leaves, and that's all it's going to be. No, if Teddy Bridgewater leaves, you'll see him bring in another quarterback to battle out for the backup spot. I don't see Taysom Hill being the future of the New Orleans Saints. I never have, and I probably never will. Now, all that being said, he has developed remarkably
Hmm.
from when he came here. You watch him stand in the pocket and throw those passes now, he's accurate. But, I mean, that does not make him the heir apparent to Drew Brees. I'm sorry, I just don't see that.
Well, and this is what I was going to say. What I'm seeing on Saint social media is people's memories only go back as far as the Vikings game. Taysom had an incredible game against Minnesota, but it's like they've just completely dismissed a 13-win season, regular season, and how we got to those 13 wins. Because they're all talking about Drew Brees and never strong arm. That's why they had to put Taysom in there because he could only throw that deep pass. And it's just like, man, just calm down, okay? I can't see Taysom, the same thing I said about Bridgewater. I can't see Taysom scoring 46 points against the San Francisco 49ers.
No,
I can't see Taysom going 29 of 30 against the Colts. I can't see him beating the Tennessee Titans the way he did. He can't throw the ball to himself. So you take him out as a receiver. Who's he throwing the ball to? Michael Thomas. If he can't throw to Michael Thomas, who does he throw to? You know, you've got he's got a role on this team as a running back, as a kick returner, as a gunner, as a tight end, as a fullback, and a quarterback. That's a lot of things he does brings to this offense. That's a lot of things you've got to fill on this offense if you remove him and make him a starter. So that's the issue you have with Taysom right now. Can he play the quarterback position? Probably. You're not winning 13 games with him as a starter.
see,
And
that's the thing that people don't realize.
yeah, and you're going to need a lot
There's a
around him.
lot of difference between stepping into that huddle as a backup quarterback in a situational mode and coming out of that tunnel as the starting quarterback. That's two completely different animals.
Yep. What did I say about Nick Foles? What did I say about let's go back. Let's go back. And Wade Wilson was a guy I brought up. Let's go back to John Forcade. You know, Forcade for 3 games in 1989 looked like the best quarterback on the field. He knocked off the Buffalo Bills, who were going to the playoffs. He knocked the Eagles out of the playoffs. And this was the Eagles of Jerome Brown, Reggie White, Buddy Ryan, Seth Joyner, Eric Allen, Andre Waters. I mean, this was a good defense. This was the body bag game defense. And if you want to know who the body bag game is, go Google that. That just to see the dude shirtless. that's why you need to Google that YouTube clip of the body bag game. But yeah, I mean, and what happened was when 4K became the starter, now the game film is on him. Now you're preparing to take away the things he does well. That's what would happen to a guy like Taysom Hill. Now you're going to take the run away from him. You're going to make him throw the ball, and maybe you sit on routes because.
And just like I said, the difference between being a starter and a backup, the preparation against you is so
Mm-hmm.
much different if they're preparing to face you as a starter.
Yep.
They're going to know every little tick in your game and
Yep.
plan for it.
Yep. And Calvin's got it right. He's planning on starting that running over linebackers and trucking defensive backs is going to end
That's
because
right.
you can't afford to take those hits. And Taysom even says that in interviews. Quarterback's coach goes after him and says, "Man, you can't take that hit, man. You really can't. You know, it's all right if you're a guy running around special teams or whatever, you play every down like it's your last because if you get hurt, it doesn't really impact the team. If you're the starting quarterback and you get hurt, now you screwed the team.
Yeah,
So
these quarterbacks that truck defensive backs like that, you want to see what the future of that is. Look at Cam Newton.
yeah, exactly. I mean, they start hitting you to teach you a lesson about running out there, and they're going to blindside you. Taysom's had the advantage. He's been able to see the guy coming, drop the shoulder, and run the defensive back over him. Now he's looking downfield to make a throw, and here comes a safety or a cornerback blitz on his blind side. Whew. Yeah, no, that's different. That's a lot different. But thank you
Okay,
guys. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, all right, I've got to,
Yeah, you got to go make the donuts. So
you know,
thank you guys for sticking with us tonight. I know we went over, but hey, it's now the off season, so we're going to run out of things to talk about a lot earlier. Um, Free agency, I think, starts in the end of February, first weekend of March. So we have the whole month of February really to kind of finish off the previews or reviews of each position. And then we'll start bringing in possible free agents and where we think holes